Well, so we'll go ahead and kick off. So the Mississippi Cannabis Trade Association, we're doing a series called like Voices from the Field. And so our objective or our main mission is just to hear from industry people who are in the, in Mississippi's market and who can kind of provide some practical advice for business owners who, are members of ours or just a part of our community. And I initially thought of you because I know obviously the amazing work that you did when you were with Southern Sky. And so when I saw that you started your own marketing company, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to talk with Cindy because, we've had conversations before and I just feel like you have a wealth of knowledge. And I also feel like marketing and advertising is things that people are a little afraid of in a super heavy regulated market. So I kind of wanted to, just us to have a conversation about things folks can do, just things that you're seeing. So I guess the first thing we could do is just kind of talk about your company and what you do.
Yeah, so my company is called High Reverie. And it's basically marketing strategy, brand strategy, social media, graphic design, anything from web to print. So, talking about people being reluctant to go into any kind of advertising or marketing in a regulated market. I mean, it can be very, very intimidating. Especially on social media. These platforms are based on like the federal regulations, and so they'll shut you down very, very quickly just if you say the wrong word, if you post the wrong picture. And it's kind of crazy. It just kind of blows my mind how some companies and some platforms, or I'm sorry, some brands can not get away with, but they'll go unscathed by posting, pictures of consumption and flower and plants and saying THC and cannabis, saying the words that are supposed to not be said on social media. How some companies can do it, and then some companies you will get shut down. So somewhere
Now,
in
do
the
you
middle.
think there's a rhyme or reason to that, or is it kind of just a stroke of luck?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of both. I know there are bots that automatically pick up, so it's not being seen by human eyes.
Yeah.
I know that there are certain things, certain content that you'll post, that people post that will get flagged immediately just because there are bots that are searching for, I mean, even in images, like even words embedded within an image, will get flagged by a bot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just to stay on the safe side, always focus on education. Always focus on education. Like, nobody really wants to be sold to anyway. Like, when we get on social media, we consider that to be our me time. And, if you're constantly saying, especially, and this goes out for like dispensaries, if you're constantly talking about, well, we've got this, we've got this product, we got that product, and if people feel like they're being sold to, then they'll just unfollow you, just
Right.
kind of like
Yeah.
getting too many marketing text messages, too many emails in your inbox of just being sold to. But if you are providing education and information, that's something different, right? And then always just making it about education, but always, make it interesting too. Like we've got, especially people working in dispensaries, dispensary owners, you've got, I mean, obviously over 21, but the younger generation working as your bud tenders, like they know what's interesting is what's going to get you follows and what's going to get
Yeah.
you likes and interaction on social media. So let them have fun with it, but always making it about. I'm
I was
sorry.
going to ask you a question. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you made a very great point about dispensaries using their workers or employees, and especially like that, I like to call it the TikTok generation,
Mhm.
who knows engagement, right? And they know how to loop people in. But there's a different side of that coin, right? Because dispensaries do have a license that's regulated by the Department of Revenue. So what is your advice for, should we just give them free reign? Because, they may not necessarily know what they can and can't do. So do you have any advice for dispensary owners when it comes to come to just like allowing someone to run the social media pages?
So yes, I do have advice. Again, if you're going to talk about cannabis, if you're going to talk about medicine, make it educational, make it informative, and make it, based on the science, based on research. If you're going to have the younger generation, the TikTok generation, post other things that maybe I would just do, like, I wouldn't do a cannabis specific post. Something fun, when I say something fun, might be like a reel of, like doing, having your bud tenders outside of the dispensary with, in front of your sign, right in front of your storefront, and doing like a little choreographed dance. That's cute. And that might get people like, that's really cute. I'm going to go see them. Like they seem like a really fun bunch. So it's got to be one or the other. I wouldn't do something that the younger generation talking about, come get this fire weed that we've got, like that's not what people want to hear. We're talking to patients. We're not talking to, the stoner crowd.
Right. I
So
love that.
that's what I would say is, and again, if it's going to be informative, it can also be about, I did see a reel recently. I would look into, that's something that I would look into the Mississippi regulations for, though. But like, as far as how to load, a rig, and how, like not necessarily showing the consumption, but
Right.
this is the rig, this is what you put in, these are the products that you put. Be careful about saying what products, like maybe, yeah, that's something that you would have to, again, you have to be really careful about, what you say, but always good planning and strategy is going to go further for you. So if you map out what you want to do, like let's say for the month of September, if you map out every single day, and consistency is everything. That's another thing about social media marketing, for all industries, from like whether it's you're a dispensary or you're a cultivation facility, you want to post with a consistent frequency. Otherwise, if people come to your Instagram page and they see that you haven't posted anything in 3 months or 6 weeks, then they might not start following you, just because it's like, well, why am I going to follow this company if they're not even posting on any kind of regular basis? People want to see action on their feed. So yeah, consistency is everything. And what I always tell potential clients is, if you can commit to that consistency, then you don't really need me. If you know that I'm pretty good at the social media, I understand, I get it. If you can commit to posting regularly, then you don't really need me. Maybe for some graphic design work, for content and photography, product photography, great. But
Right.
if you're not going to do it, if you know that I don't even personally get on social media for myself, much less, I'm not going to do it for my business, then you can't afford to not hire me.
Yeah, for sure. And I was going to ask you that, like, what are some, because we're talking about social media, right? What are some daily things that companies, whether they're a big brand or a small brand, can do just to kind of help, speed road the exposure that they're looking for?
Oh, it's interacting with the community. And so like you just go and just start following all of especially like all the other Mississippi businesses, in cannabis, follow them, see what they're doing, create that Mississippi cannabis community. Like we've got to get through this together. We're not gonna, like getting that patient count up is everything. Like I was speaking to, not to get off subject, but I was speaking to a dispensary owner up in Oxford, and he was saying, that the patient count has to get up to 40,000 before I can even break even, and so like, and that was a few months ago. And so like I use that number as a benchmark, and I just, constantly looking at the numbers to make sure, because right now there isn't, it's getting there, but right now we're still building that market. Like there isn't even a market yet, and that's one thing that the state did, was they handed out business licenses to everyone, but then there weren't any patients to sell to, right? So they didn't create a market. And so like that's what they're doing now, is building that market. And until the market even really gets to where it needs to be for people to actually start breaking even, is you have to work together. You
Yeah.
know, it can't be a dog eat dog. You know, you have to be able to work together to build each other up, build each other's businesses up. And so then when the market finally gets to a healthy level, then you can start competing, right?
Yeah.
And so that's I'm sorry, what was we were talking about?
Just daily things. And that's great. I love that you
Yeah.
said that. You talked about consistency, right? And just, building that community. And I do like that people have started doing that because, we'll get tons of new followers. And it's almost like there's this Mississippi cannabis industry train, right, on social media. And people are connecting and finding other accounts,
Mhm.
because we are in this together and we are trying to build the patient count. And especially like what you said, your point to dispensaries, there's so many dispensaries in the state of Mississippi, right? And so I think when some people think about marketing, they think about this huge thing and this huge marketing firm, and some people get a little overwhelmed by it. But I love that you're kind of talking about some of the daily things, because when we get to the competing part of the market, because there are so many dispensaries, the consistency and the daily showing up daily is going to be so important.
Right. And another word for it is just word of mouth, right?
Yeah.
I've spoken to a lot of people that haven't been on social media, but they have found some success in the business, and that's because they've got the right people out there shaking hands and kissing babies, and and then just word of mouth, like if you've got a friendly demeanor, if people, I mean, people will want to do business with you that way. And that goes for sales people, on the cultivation side. But I mean, the bud tenders, those are the frontline people. Those are the ones, like, you just make sure that you get them trained, invest in that training, because you can have the most beautiful dispensary, the nicest, all of the nicest decor, and but if your bud tenders don't have good customer service, they don't have that hospitality, they don't have the training, then the customers aren't going to come back. If they don't have the knowledge of what they need to know, the customers will go somewhere else.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, word of mouth is big, but that also translates to social media, where you are responding to people asking questions in your comments. If people, whether it's good or bad, if it's a good review or a bad review, you always want to address bad reviews offline. And say, hey, we're going to direct message you, so we're going to take it offline. But then if it's a good one, always thank them for all the high praises that they give you. I mean, if just like if they were right in front of your face, they wouldn't, and they say, oh, you guys are so great, I love you so much, I'm such a big fan, you wouldn't just turn around and walk away. Yeah. So always respond to the good reviews. And that's just good. That's just interacting with people that take the time to interact with you on social media.
Yes.
Yeah.
So before we get off the social media train, are there things just as a marketing professional, right, that people should not do? We know there's a ton of things that people can do to get exposure and go viral, and all of those great things. But as it relates to cannabis in our industry, we know it's a hit or miss thing. Are there things that people should just kind of be wary about that they probably should not do? Because it could potentially get their accounts taken down.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it in terms of, if you wouldn't show that content to a child, if it's too cartoony, if it's too, if it can be questionable whether or not if it's appropriate for children, then just don't. Because it is an open platform. I mean, there isn't like, actually, I did some digging, and I did notice that Meta is starting to have this, it's very hidden and it's buried, but there is a box you can check now to say, my content is for people 21 and over. Yeah. There is that, but again, it's buried and it's hidden, so a lot of companies aren't even going to see it, much less they don't even know about it, because I'm quite certain it's something new. But yeah, I mean, it's an open platform, that's open to the general public. And as we all know, I mean, there are, 10, 12, 9-year-olds on these social media platforms. And so if it's questionable, then just don't post it.
Yeah.
And again, always just make it about education. It's not, you're not doing anything for the culture, for the industry itself. If you're just posting stoner culture stuff. I mean, I like to think of it as people in general, especially if you're not in the industry, people in general are probably 90%. Their outlook on it is, oh, that's just stoner culture.
Right.
And then 10% of their brain is like, oh, but there's something there. I know that, like I have a cousin that had, that needed it to relieve of their cancer treatment conditions and all this stuff. And so like they know somebody that knows somebody that knows that it's education, that it's medicine. But that 90% is always going to override what they think that might be out there. And so if we just keep normalizing talking about it, talking about the education, talking about the medicine, talking about the benefits, and making it to where it's like people like me and you, people that, I mean, I know people that dose just the tiniest amounts. So, and this is for work, not that they have to. It's just that it keeps them focused. It keeps them, keeps their creativity going, and it keeps them from their brain going in 100 different directions. It keeps them focused so that they can get their work done. And then in the evening, it's something different. It helps them relax. It helps them sleep. It helps them, all of that. So, I mean, it's if we talk about that, if we don't talk about just like the lazy and the, just the what people think of it to be, because I mean, we are in a completely different generation, and the culture is changing, it's shifting.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, the culture has always like been the same. It's just the people on the outside are starting to finally realize that it wasn't what they always thought it was.
Exactly. And just breaking that stigma. I know you and I have had conversations about that, and like, as we're trying to move where people are accepting that even if they choose not to partake or, to be a patient, that they understand why certain people choose this medicine. And I think just to your point, if it is educational driven, right, people are learning something. I mean, I'm on 50 pages a day, just looking and seeing what folks are posting. And I'm like, oh, I never knew that. And I mean, even though it's a relaxed environment, I'm at home on my couch just surfing, but it still is an engaging educational journey that I'm going down. I feel like a lot of people are rocking it when it comes to their pages. I mean, the visuals are great, the engagement is great, and they're making sure that it's, educational driven. Because we know on the state side, they don't want to see consumption, that sort of thing. It kind of goes against the regulations. So we're talking about social media, but let's transition a little bit, because we know there's marketing is everything, right? It's all encompassing. And some people think when we talk about marketing, it's like, oh, well, let me create a Facebook and Instagram and a LinkedIn page, and there you go.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the best? I mean, we know all forms of marketing are great, right? Some are going to be greater than others, but what would you say that people should really pay attention to, cannabis companies? They should really pay attention to as it relates to marketing.
So in the rest of the world, people are right to want to create an Instagram page, a Facebook page, and live on social media, because that is where marketing is living, is on social media. In the rest of the world, but we're not in the rest of the world. We're in the cannabis world, and unfortunately, because it's still, it's still a class 1 narcotic federally, and because we're still in those dark ages of the war on drugs. Technically, we're still in those dark ages. We have to go back in terms of marketing. We have to go back into those ages and say, okay, it's going to be guerrilla marketing. It's going to be word of mouth. It's going to be website. Make sure that's the main thing. To me, that's like the top tier, like that, to make sure you have a robust website. And what I mean by that is your website is your owned land. Think of it as owning land. That is your owned land with your home and your property. Social media is rented space. You are only renting space on somebody else's property. That's Meta's property. That's Twitter's property, or X. That's LinkedIn's property. That's the YouTube. That's all the property that you are just renting space on, and you can get evicted very quickly without warning. And so your website it's like I said, it's your own property, your own land. Nobody can kick you out, and you can say whatever you want to say on it. You can talk about cannabis all day long. You can post your content, all the education, everything. And when I say make sure that it's a robust website, I mean post blogs, write blogs, educational blogs. The more you have on, the more information you have on your website, the bigger the SEO that you're building. And so you'll, like, SEO is another very, very important thing to pay attention to, focus on, is because when somebody goes online and types in, you know, they can't really remember the name of your business, but they kind of know something, especially in Mississippi. You'll float to the top on Google searches the more robust your website is with the SEO, like the SEO building your brand. And yeah, so like the more robust your website, it's basically like building a bigger home, you know, with more bedrooms, with more rooms, more, you know, like just more. And then your social media can then start pointing people, directing people to your website for all of that information. And that's basically what you want to use. You definitely want to have a social media presence, because again, that's where the rest of the world lives. And so, you know, I mean, everybody's on their phone constantly for hours a day. They're just scrolling. And so, like, in order to get in front of their face, you have to have a social media presence. But what you want to do is you want to direct them to your website and say, we've got all this information here, you know, give them a little bit of a teaser, a little tidbit, and then say, but come here to our website to learn more. And then just point people to your website. Newsletters is another thing, is just to get people to sign up for your newsletters. That way you can then market directly to that customer. And I know it's like getting into this into this industry, newsletters, I was like, wow, that it felt like I was going backwards, but I mean, it's true. Like, that's how we have to market to the patients out there. And it's not just about selling to them. I mean, it is about breaking the stigma and normalizing the conversation and getting the education out there. Like, we really have to sell that in order for it, you know, like we're working towards, you know, just having, you know, decriminalizing and legalizing, right? So it's got to be, we have to sell that information.
Well, I love that you said that, because I think, and there's been times in my career where I thought reverse. I thought, okay, let me make sure that my social media is super polished and everything lives here. And my website almost served as a landing page, where what you're saying is almost opposite, right? So of course you want to make sure that your social media is polished, but it's ultimately to drive people to your website. And I love the analogy about renting and owning. That makes sense to me.
That's right.
But as we're talking about websites, right, I think that can be a little overwhelming for people who may not have large budgets. But as we know, there's so many sites out there available that, you know, can help create websites for little to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But when we talk about the website copy, right, and we're talking about, I want a website, I want it to represent my brand, but I don't know what to put on it. What is your take on AI? Because that's all the buzz and everybody's talking about it. Are you an AI fan, or you're kind of like, I'm not sure yet?
I am leaning towards becoming a fan. I haven't actually used it myself, although I am building my business and my website and my social media. I'm in the process of building that now, and so it's definitely something I'm going to be looking into. I see the value in it. I see the value in now. There's a line that you can't cross, though. Like, if you go full AI to write all of you're going to sound like a robot, and nobody wants to work with that. People want to work with people, you know, they want to see. So if you like, let's say you want to build the blog and education side of your website, which is what needs to happen. You're not a formal writer, right? That's fine. You can have AI write the entire blog, but make sure that you go back and you read it and put your voice into it. You know, make sure that it's written so that it's written with a personality, with a voice, because your brand is going to have a voice. And if it's robotic, then I mean, it's not going to be very popular. So I am fan. I am in favor of using this AI. I think it's a very useful tool that will help us, you know, it can, I mean, it can be very destructive. And I am a little fearful of where AI can be taken. But you know, that's just my conspiracy side. But no, I do see how useful it can be in terms of, you know, getting information out there. But again, it has to be, and I'm a creative, and so like if it's not written creatively, if it doesn't have a personality, then I mean, you're gonna lose interest. I mean, you would lose my interest. You're gonna lose the general population's interest in the first two sentences if you don't work that AI to where it can be useful to your advantage.
Yeah, I agree. I love AI, but I also understand the voice and the branding aspect of it. And so if anybody has ever used Chat GPT, which is, you know, what a lot of people are just raving about, when you give it a prompt, it's going to spit out like paragraphs and paragraphs of information. And obviously on your social media, you don't want to copy and paste all of that. And you especially don't want to do it on your website because, like you said, they will use vocabulary. I mean, Chat GPT will use vocabulary words where you're like, let me look this up and see what it means, right? It looks more like a research paper. And so it's really important to go back and like really edit it down. I like to use it for outlines. So if you use the right prompts, you can say, I am writing a blog about XYZ. Provide me with an outline of what I should talk about. And so it'll give you talking points, right?
Nice.
And so then you can kind of use your own voice and still make sure that you're aligned with your brand to kind of, you know, deliver that message and not necessarily copy and paste 3,000 words.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, it's really good in that sense. And so I guess my little advice is if anybody's interested in AI, is just like research the different prompts, because if you just kind of go in and say, write this, create this, like you said, it's going to be very robotic. I mean, it's going to be great ideas, but I think the normal consumer would probably identify that it's not yours. That you know, you just kind of copied and pasted from someone. So there's great prompts out there to kind of help Chat GPT give you ideas without necessarily giving you the whole thing, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, it reads like that too. I mean, you know, like on TikTok, kind of made that robotic, and I think it's probably because it's a Chinese company, but like where you just type in what you want it to say, and then it will spit it out and talk like this. You know, I think that the Chat GPT and the write-ups that it creates, to me, in my head, that's how I hear it. You know, it
Yeah.
reads just like that because there's no personality there. It's just a write-up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you mentioned a little bit ago about SEO, right? And so because we may have people out there who don't really understand, can you break SEO and like why that's so important for someone who doesn't necessarily have that prior knowledge of what that is?
So the best way that I can explain it, because it's I'm so embarrassed to say that it has taken me years to understand what SEO is. Search engine optimization. It's basically like hashtags, right? If you hashtag cannabinoids, and so like that way, like when you're, and I'm going to go back to blog writing and your blog section of your website, you know, if you every time that you say the word cannabinoids, it'll be linked, and it can link back to an original blog that you wrote about what is a cannabinoid. And so like every following blog post that you write that says the word cannabinoid, you link that back to your original. And so like everything is interlinked. And so that way, like the search engine optimization, like let's say somebody types into their Google search, what are cannabinoids? The more you have that on your website, the further, like the higher up that you're going to appear on their search results. So think of it, I like to say, think of it as like a hashtag. And so popular hashtags have like millions of people that are using that hashtag. And so you want to use that because that way that gets your social media profile higher on people's searches. And then, I don't know, I mean, yeah, I guess that's the best way to describe it. But again, I'm not an SEO person. I'm not an IT person. It's probably a better way to describe that. and a better way. I mean, I know that it's been described to me, and that to me is like the best way that I can correlate it.
Yeah, that made total sense to me. And it is complex. I mean, there are people and there are companies who, as you know, that's all they specialize in is
Mhm.
SEO, right? You can have a marketing person over here, but then you also have an SEO person because
Absolutely.
it's so much and it's so complex, and you can do it very well or you can do it really wrong, where it's like, you know, you're the Mississippi company, but every time somebody searches something, they're pulling up companies from out of state because obviously their SEO is placed, it's better.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so I think you did a really good job of explaining that. And which is interesting though, because the new social media platform that's out, for those who don't know, is Threads. And so they don't use hashtags. It doesn't link to anything, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
And the funny thing is that their explanation for that is that, and they were like, oh, that's a Twitter thing, that like that's their thing. And I was like, well, I mean, it's on Instagram, like we use it on Instagram. I don't know. I think it was definitely one thing when Twitter first came out. I thought it was really, really cool. This whole the idea of hashtags and then searching the same subject matter just through hashtags. I thought that was a really, really cool thing. And the fact that I don't, if they have if they provided another solution to that, then, but I don't know, like that's just a weird thing to not include into the platform.
Yeah, and it's very, because I always use hashtags to find my community, right? Like you talked about. So if I'm doing cannabis education and that's a hashtag, then I'm using that to find out like who are the thought leaders in this space, what do they have to offer. But on this new platform, I can't do that. So I'm like, where are my people? Like
Yeah.
I know they want you to bring them over from Instagram, but it's like as far as meeting new people, it's gonna be difficult because we can't necessarily search for them. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And it's not, and so far it hasn't been, it really hasn't been that enticing to me to move over. I mean, Twitter has definitely lost its traction, or X has definitely lost its traction. People aren't on there anymore, and like the algorithm is completely out of whack now. But I don't know that Threads is the answer just yet. Although, I mean, it is a meta the company, and the reason why people would go to Twitter was because they were more cannabis friendly than Meta. And so I don't know, we'll see what's next.
Well, I
And
do before we
LinkedIn,
trans. I'm
LinkedIn,
sorry.
LinkedIn is very, very cannabis friendly.
Yes, it
Yes.
is. And you know what? That brings me to my next point before we talk about move away from this and talk about something else. But so, we know that sometimes like you can go on the app, right? And so it asks you, do you want to link to Facebook? Do you want to link to Twitter? That kind of thing. Do you feel, just in your own opinion, just because you do this work, should we have different content for different platforms, or should we just kind of be lazy about it and it's like share it everywhere, the same post? Like what are your thoughts about that?
My thoughts are is well, my thoughts are that you should post consistently. Um, I think that's a really good question. That's a really good question because there are brands that I follow on several platforms, and it does get redundant. And so like I tend to unfollow from certain platforms and just have this one space.
Right.
Um, but I think that it would definitely be more interesting. And I think that yes, I mean, make the time to post different information or extra information. So like let's say on LinkedIn you're sharing all of the latest news articles, like anything new that happens in the cannabis field, any um any new information on the science, any new information on the legalities, what different states are doing. I think that would be a good place, like your LinkedIn profile would be a good place for that. But even in Instagram stories, you can you can share a lot more in stories, like in that you can actually link to specific articles or blog posts or anything like that, in your Instagram stories. I think that on Instagram and Facebook even, you might want to stay away from like doing multiple posts, because then people will feel like, oh, I've heard enough from that company or this person. But I think that if it's going to be different anywhere, I think that it should be on LinkedIn. I would post more there, post more on what's happening in the industry. Twitter is more conversational, so you don't even have to have like an image, where Instagram is like you have to have an image or a reel. They prefer reels nowadays, but an image on Twitter, you don't, or Twitter or Threads, you don't have to have an image, and it is more conversational. And so that's where a good place to have like thought provoking conversations, like having a thought provoking question, ask it out there, have people comment. Yeah, I mean, I hope that answers your question, because I mean, yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a good idea to have different content on different platforms, because they all provide a different service. Like they all, we're on all these different platforms for many different reasons. For Instagram, it's for like the pictures, the beautiful pictures and the reels. And for Facebook, it's for us to connect with our friends. For Twitter, it's for us to have like crazy conversations with strangers, and LinkedIn is to connect with business people. So for all these different things, you know, just use those outlets to have outward conversations. Yeah.
That was really great. I love that advice. And I think if folks were to use the advice you gave at the beginning of, you know, of the call, when you talked about planning, I think that's going to play a huge role in being able to provide those different avenues of content, because, you know, it's so hard to think of things on the fly. And especially if you're trying to think of things on the fly for 5 or 6 different platforms, you run into the, you know, where you're just like, just share it everywhere. I know I've done it times that I've been super lazy. I'm like, you know, let me just link Instagram and Facebook and post the same things. But for our audience on TikTok, right, they're not looking for these big long captions and all of that good stuff. It's pure engagement. So that was really, really great advice. So I want to transition us to talk about another piece of marketing that I don't think a lot of people pay attention to in our space, or the conversation is being had, but the graphic design part of it. I think some people think about it as a totally separate thing, and I know you absolutely love it. So I want to talk a little bit about how graphic design can play a part in marketing, and if that's something that business owners should really pay attention to as they're thinking about their budgets and what they put their money towards.
Yeah, I mean, if you are using, I mean, even something with a pretty nice piece of software like Canva, a lot of people are using Canva, and I think that if you can't afford a graphic designer, then that's a great start. Canva is a great start. Although what I will say is that it does start becoming pretty redundant. You can even see, I mean, even if you choose different colors, like 2 different companies, you know, this company is using, they're using the same format, but just in different colors to like be geared more towards their brand. People can start to detect the similarities. And so like, that's where like a lot of people are using Canva, and you can tell, you know, I mean, it's good stuff. I mean, it's nicely designed and everything, but it's just kind of vanilla. Right. And so if you are a brand that you really want to stand out, you have to be, you know, you have to be a unicorn. You want to be a unicorn in a sea of vanilla. And so when it comes to packaging, your package design, your and even your social media, and like the style that, you know, your images, you want them to pop and be colorful, or if you just want it to be black and white, I mean, that's artistic as well. You know, just find something that is on brand, like what is your brand style, what is your brand voice, what is your brand aesthetic, and that's all part of the creative process that you would work with a graphic designer. But yeah, I mean, I think that in terms of like brands in Mississippi, it's going to come down to when the customers is in the dispensary and they see the different packaging on the wall. You want something that's going to catch their eye, that's going to be beautifully done and designed, and it can be you know, it can be a design, but it can also be, you know, the finishes. It can be like a nice, beautiful matte finish with your logo in gloss, you know, and I mean, that is graphically designed, but it's very, very simple. You don't need to hire a graphic designer for excuse me. you would just need to have that conversation with your packaging, manufacturer, just say, what kind of crazy cool finishes can we do to like make me stand out, and then, I mean, that can be like, take you over the top in terms of like getting noticed.
Yeah, yeah. So if someone wanted to work with you, because marketing can be a little overwhelming for people who don't necessarily understand all of what goes into it. And some people may feel like, well, maybe I'm not at the point where I can hire someone like Cindy because I don't have my logo, I don't have a brand voice, I don't even know what my brand colors would be. Do they have to have all of these things to start with you, or is it kind of like you guys develop these things together?
We would, oh no, this is where I love to work with brands. I have built my entire career working with corporate startups. And so building, like designing the logo, coming up with the colors, creating the brand voice, the aesthetics, having like mood boards, like putting together mood boards with people. That's so much fun. So yeah, no, you don't have to have anything. You just like, do you have a name? Let's come up with a name together, so I mean, even that, like, I love the creative process. And so, hiring me, like, you would, if you hire me, like, I don't have a name, I don't have a logo, I don't have any colors, I don't, I have an idea of what I think I might like, but let's have a conversation. I can deliver all of that to you and with, in a nice package. And we're going to have fun during the creative process.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love that, because I know so many people, and actually, it's so interesting because with the Mississippi Cannabis Trade Association, obviously we get members from different stages, right? We get people who have already built their businesses and they're like, well, we just want to, join a professional community,
Mhm.
so that we can meet and collaborate with others. And then we have people who join and say, help, I know that I want to be a cultivator. This is a family owned business, but that's all I got. Link me with some people that can help because I have nothing. So I'm happy that, you communicated that. So I guess in closing, if, and just almost as a summary, if you could give people who are already in the business or people who are thinking about it, just 3 takeaways, like as it relates to marketing in Mississippi, in the cannabis industry. These are 3 takeaways that you need to make sure that you are definitely doing to make sure that your brand is getting the maximum exposure.
Yes. Talk to the people at the Mississippi Cannabis Trade Association, build a robust website, make sure that it has the most information you just constantly building on that website, putting more information on there, send out, like, have people encourage people to sign up for your newsletters, and then write the newsletters once a month, twice a month is all you really need to do to talk about, whether it's there's always new information coming out in the cannabis industry. So there's always something to talk about, new products that you might be creating or, having, selling, and then use your rented space, use your social media platforms in order to find new people or to engage with your current customers, find new customers, and always direct them back to your website.
I
Yep.
love that. Was there anything about your company or you that you want to kind of leave us with?
Yeah. So High Reverie, I mean, it's full service on marketing and strategy building, brand building, graphic design work. There's something I was going to say. Oh yeah, like going back to social media, social media is a piece of it, the marketing side, the graphic design side. And then the social media side, if you know that you are not going to be on social media on a consistent basis, then you can't afford not to hire me. But if you can, just make sure that you are consistent. Just be consistent. That's what people want to see.
Well, thank you so much for having this conversation. I'm pretty sure that we'll get lots of emails and DMs, and hopefully that means that folks will come over to you to get some help. I just, because when the industry first started, we're really heavy in regulations, right? And that's always going to be a conversation because it's always been updated. There's new regulations and that sort of thing. But, with the Cannabis Trade Association, we're thinking about the business members and what people need now. And I think we have a lot of people who are licensed, they're at market, and they're looking around and there's so many other businesses, right, selling the same products, doing some of the same things. So I thought it was important to have a conversation about marketing, just to kind of give people some tidbits and practical advice about things that they can kind of use right now, to kind of help their businesses. So we really appreciate you having this conversation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You're welcome. It was my pleasure to be here. And like going back to what you were saying about, what makes you stand out in terms of dispensaries, it's not going to be enough. Again, it's not going to be enough to be the most beautiful dispensary with the most beautiful aesthetics. You have to make sure that your bud tenders are well trained, that they're well informed, that they're well educated, and that they can speak to the customer on the customer level. So the patients are coming from all different aspects of their knowledge of the industry and what the medicine is, right? And so like that's part of the art of being a bud tender, is finding out where that patient is in their knowledge, and then meeting them where they are, and then going from there. I've seen some comments on some cultivators and some dispensaries saying, well, I went into this dispensary and they said, oh, you need to smoke this. This is fire. This is like, oh, it'll get you really high. And that's not where every patient is. Like they might need something to, and also, every medicine is different for everybody. Everybody is different. Everybody's endocannabinoid system is different from others. And so, it's all about finding what the right medicine is for you. And so like bud tenders should understand that, and that like a good bud tender is going to, meet the patient where their needs are at that moment. And, oh, is this what you need? You need something for rest and relaxation? Try this. If this doesn't work, I've got this other one I want you to try. It's not always about pushing one thing that might have worked for you, right? And it doesn't even have to be like the whole stoner culture thing. It can just be like, if it works for you, and you're just pushing this one product, you're doing your patient a disservice, or the patient a disservice, by only pushing that one product. Like it could be other things that will work for them. So yeah, just make sure that your bud tenders are trained and they know how to speak to the patients. They know how to educate the patients. That will go a long, long way for your business.
Yeah, and it feeds back into what you said, the traditional word of mouth, because
Yeah.
the better your people are, the better the experience that the patients have. Guess what? They're going to go out and tell their friends, oh, go to XYZ dispensary. They have the best people. So,
It's true.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.